on Australia's business channel. This is Mediaweek.
Hello and welcome to the program ahead on this week's show. Nine's investor roadshow in the US ahead of a likely IPO this year. Twitter appoints an Australian MD. Foxtel and Globecast launched two major Asian-based channels to Australian viewers. But first, Clive Palmer is threatening to sue News Corp chairman Rupert Murdoch over an article in The Australian that labelled him a buffoon who threatens democracy. The publication this week defended itself as an independent in the wake of criticism of bias, including from Fairfax chairman Roger Corbett. So is any publicity good publicity, or does this hurt the bottom line? And what about the impact of the election campaign on sales, subscription and ad revenue? Well, for more on that, we're joined this week by the CEO of The Australian, Nicholas Gray, in studio with me. And of course, in our Hobart studio this week, co-host James Manning, editor and publisher of Mediaweek. Gentlemen, thanks very much for your time. Mr. Gray, I might start with you. Firstly, to Mr. Palmer. Seems Kevin Rudd, maybe not the only politician that's been upset in recent times by news. Clive Palmer now threatening to sue Rupert Murdoch over a Hedley Thomas article. It's quite bizarre.
It is bizarre. I mean, I'll let the editor-in-chief comment on editorial matters. I'd just say that Hedley Thomas is a Walkley Award-winning journalist. He's one of our best, and we stand behind him. Would
you be worried of any high-profile, I suppose, legal issues, though, from a commercial standpoint?
No. It's part of our role is to hold people to account, particularly people who are running for the highest office in the land, and it comes with the territory.
Now, the Australian responded this week to...
Nicholas, I wonder...
Oh, go ahead, James.
Yeah, Nicholas, I was just going to pursue that a little bit more and say, look, the issue of the media, how the campaign's been covered, is almost a bigger issue than a lot of the policies, I guess. A lot of perception that the News Limited papers in particular are following a particular line, supporting the coalition. Could that have commercial implications for the group, and particularly the Australian, either sort of immediately or in the future, do you think?
Look, I'll leave my comments exclusively to the Australian. I'll let the editors and publishers of the other papers comment on their behalf. With respect to the Australian, politics is a core part of our offering. We've enjoyed a slight uplift in retail sales throughout the election campaign. Our journalists have done a terrific job of covering it day to day, the depth of opinion and analysis, a news poll each week, and commercially, both through the campaign and afterwards, we don't expect it to have any adverse impact.
You don't see any bias from the Australian one way or the other during the election campaign?
Look, I'll leave comments on our editorial policy to our editor-in-chief.
What about more broadly then, an election? Does it pose a good time commercially for a newspaper like The Australian? I mean, very much the major labels in the headlines as both sides of politics try to court as much coverage as possible.
Well, commercially there are two things that drive our revenue, obviously circulation and advertising. From a circulation point of view, it's about print and digital. We've never had more people paying for our product Monday to Friday across print and digital than we do right now, as released in the June audit figures. And so obviously we've got good commercial momentum from a circulation point of view, and our expectation is that that continues. Election is a good time for us to sell papers and digital subscriptions because politics is an important part of our offering. From an advertising point of view, the market's been, I think overall, clearly there are some challenges, but the last couple of months have been fine. What we've seen is more government and lobbying advertising through that period, and probably a couple of other categories have stepped back a little bit. So what we'll see after the election is less government and campaign advertising, but some of those other categories come back in, and we're hopeful that whatever the outcome of the election, that there's a period of calm and stability and improved commercial dynamics as a result.
How do you go about maintaining the momentum? I mean, you're talking about distribution, you're talking about sales and so forth. How do you keep that going?
Well, I think obviously politics is very important to the Australian, but it's one of many verticals, and we've just conducted a very detailed piece of research, understanding our audience, particularly those who buy the paper, and what it is that makes them buy and want to read our paper. And politics is important, but it's one of a range of important verticals. World news is important, business is important, sport is important, and then our offerings that come in once a week, whether it's the media section on Monday, Higher Ed on Wednesday, Prime Space on Thursday, our Wish luxury magazine monthly, the Weekend Australian magazine on Saturday. There's a whole range of reasons that people buy the paper. Most people buy it for more than one reason. So the end of the election will simply mean that more of that content is more likely to surface a little bit to the front of the paper.
And how important is it? Because I was some analysis that CBA analysts suggesting 20% of News Corp revenue comes from the newspapers, but speculation that the Australian is, as it stands at the moment, a loss maker. I mean, are you confident of turning that around and driving it into profit? Yeah,
it's. I don't want to comment on the individual financials of the Australian. I'll leave that to our CFO, but. There are two things that need to be done to improve our profitability. One is to drive circulation growth, and as I mentioned, that's holding on to print circulation, and we put through a price increase a couple of weeks ago, and that won't be the last time we do that. And then digital subscriptions, we've got over 50,000 according to the last audit number of digital subscriptions, and it's grown since then and will continue to grow. So from our point of view, the overall circulation revenue continuing to grow, that's important. And then from an advertising perspective, I think with print advertising, plainly there have been challenges to that market, but the release of the new EMMA methodology last week, which is much more, we think, robust than what's previously been in the market, and tells us that in fact our Monday to Friday readership is 40% higher than previously thought. So that suddenly means that our newspaper advertising is much better, represents much better value at current pricing than it previously did. And then of course you've got the growth of digital. Our overall audience across print and digital has never been larger, and monetising the digital part of that audience through advertising is a big growth opportunity.
I might let James Manning jump in. I think he's chomping at the bit to ask a couple of questions. James?
Yeah, Nicholas, I was just wondering, has it been an expensive year for the Australian, given that you arguably have the most comprehensive national sort of campaign coverage, and we've been in campaign mode for most of the year?
James, I wouldn't say we've upweighted our investment particularly for this year. I mean, we've got a very comprehensive Canberra bureau, and then state reporters everywhere covering politics, and that hasn't altered through the course of this year. Our investments at the moment have been focused on digital, because that's the biggest growth engine of the business. We've made investments in marketing this year to relaunch our brand. So we've made a range of investments, but we're closely managing costs, and that's really the other important part of managing to profitability, is making sure you're managing your costs closely.
And is that an ongoing process, the cost management? Sorry, James, go ahead.
That's all right.
I was just going to ask about...
You just also mentioned the EMMA.
Love the live television delay that we've got going here. As I was just...
You carry on, James.
All right. The managing costs, we've just come out of reporting season. We've seen it right across, not just media, but right across industries within Australia. How sustainable is it? I mean, how much more cost can you extract from your own operations to maintain a buffer, if you like, for the bottom line?
Well, I mean, I think we continually need to find ways to do things more efficiently. One of the things that News Corp Australia has talked about a lot over the last couple of years is its investment in Methode, which allows you to produce content once and then publish it multiple times into the newspaper, onto the website, onto the M site, and onto the iPad app. So I think it's about finding ways to do things efficiently. Plainly, our brand now spans 5 or 6 different channels. The newspaper, and then a range of different distribution points, and we need to make sure we have our great content in all of those points. The more efficiently we can do those things, the more we can invest in journalism. But we will keep investing, and as I mentioned before, our paid audience has never been higher, and we've, notwithstanding the circulation challenges that the industry faces, the Australian circulation in print has held up better than most, and that's because our consumers value our product, and we're determined to ensure that they continue to do so.
James, did you want to jump in with a question?
Yeah, look, I'll just give you 2 quick ones. I'll get them in together. The Emma readership you've talked a little bit about, gives you a total brand recognition, I think, of over 3 million, which is a pretty staggering figure. Does that have some commercial implications for your advertising content in the future? Do you think you can really start to monetise that audience? And then just finally, maybe from me on that, you've got a new chief executive of the company, Julian Clark. Have you had to spend any time with him yet to see sort of support the current strategy and the course the paper's on?
Yeah, thanks, James. So with respect to Emma, as you've referred to, it's shown that there's over 3 million people who read The Australian every month across print and digital, and that's a really exciting figure for us. And that presents two opportunities. One, we'd like to convert as many of those 3 million as possible into paid readers who either purchase a copy or more of the newspaper or take out a digital subscription. At the moment, we've got, as I mentioned, about 164,000 people across print and digital Monday to Friday, and over 300,000 on Saturday. So plainly, there's a much broader group of people who we can potentially convert to subscribers. And secondly, obviously, advertisers value that reach. It's a very high quality audience, but the fact that it's quite broad as well, and in fact, it goes beyond the Australian. The Australian is just over 3 million, but if you add Business Spectator, for which I'm also responsible, and also the Australian eyeballs of the Wall Street Journal, which I'm not directly responsible but forms part of our premium quality portfolio, you're at almost 3.5 million, and that's a very, very significant audience, considerably larger in that premium quality and business segment. On the new CEO, I've spent time with Julian. He's a great supporter of the Australian and has lots of ideas and energy, and you know, I look forward to working for him as we drive the business forward.
Fantastic. On that note, we're going to take a break. Nicholas Gray, really appreciate you coming on this week. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me, James and James.
Coming up after the break, highlights from the Southern Cross Austereo Engage live event on the digital economy. Stay with us.